You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
That's right, everybody. Where reason meets reality. Welcome to your rational island in a sea of chaos. Happy Monday, everybody. This is the Capitalist Corner, and I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz, who also hosts his own amazing show called The Rational Egoist. Michael, given the insanity that we have been experiencing over the last couple of weeks, I think more people need to see The Rational Egoist. I think it'll really help deal with the insanity, the psychosis that seems to be gripping the nation at the moment. What's going on now with The Rational Egoist that can possibly help us get through this morass?
Great episode out right now with the economist Vance Ginn. We discussed his paper on the show not too long ago on the 20 questions that people should ask about economics. Really good interview, really great guy. I'll be going on his podcast in a few weeks, so that should be great as well. I'm excited about the episode. My producer is back, so we've got some in the queue. I know Mark loves the word queue, so we've got some in the queue. I've got a bunch of interviews scheduled. We're ready to rock and roll.
Can I just say something about queues?
No.
Yes, I'm going to say something anyway.
Then you shouldn't have asked. You should have did it.
It's a rhetorical question. I knew it was a rhetorical question. But look, I purchased your book from Amazon, the hard book from Amazon, because I've been getting so much grief from everybody in the audience that I have not read your book yet. And it's made me, quite frankly, it's made me feel like an asshole who's not supporting my friend when I should be supporting my friend. So here's what's going to happen. All right, I could flip my camera out here and show you literally 100 books that I still have to get to.
Oh God!
Hold on. Let me just say this: 6 more that are 700 pages a piece over here, and I'm doing research for my part as well. But while I am doing my research, I'm going to jump your book to the head of the queue the second it gets here and read it simultaneously with my historical research for the project that I'm doing now. So hopefully in the next week or two, your book will be consumed by me, your flaky ass friend who has not read it and been made to feel extremely guilty by a group of very persistent Liebowitz fans out there.
Well, I got to say, though, this is an interesting turn of events, but I did send you a PDF of the book months ago.
PDFs, my friend.
Well, I don't know what to tell you.
I told you that months ago. I like hardcover books now. I don't even use my Kindle anymore. I like the hardcover books. Even though they're a pain to carry around, I used to love my Kindle because I could have 3,000 books on it. It weighs 2 pounds and I could carry it.
No, I get it. The hardcover book allows you to have a ready-made excuse for why you're not reading. I get that. I get it. I can understand.
That's not what I was thinking, actually, but the hardcover book actually is a sensual pleasure to read. And Michael, I want to have sensual pleasure while reading your book, View from a Cage.
Oh my God!
Which is not. I know I gave it to Persephone. I gave it to her. Which is not.
That's even worse.
Which is not. Oh God, you've got a mind that is in the gutter, my friend.
Everything. You're the one saying all the dirty stuff.
But then when I try to make up for it, your mind is in the gutter with that too.
Because it's more dirty stuff.
Okay, listen, no, it's dirty in your own mind. Look, we have a lot of crap to deal with today. This I don't know about you, Michael, but the last week and a half or so has been devastating to me. First with the senseless murder of this Ukrainian girl, which completely destroyed me emotionally. I don't even know this person. But I feel I'm a bit of a sheepdog, and I feel a visceral disgust and pain for helpless people being attacked, and for nobody around them helping them. That disturbs me. It's a sign of deep pathology, I think, in our culture today, a deep insensitivity to violence and to concern for other people. Ironically, being a rational egoist, I seem to have a great deal of concern for the stranger, more so than the people who claim to be, those who would, those self-sacrificial, altruistic types. That disturbed me. But the death of Charlie Kirk has truly disturbed me quite a bit. Not just the death, which was senseless in and of its own, in its own respect. Because regardless of whether you agree with Charlie Kirk or not, what he was trying to do was, in fact, very good, which was trying to open a dialogue between opposing sides and trying to establish the premise that the way in which you resolve disputes is through persuasion. The way in which you dissolve disputes is through civil debate. And there were multiple times I saw online where people actually questioned Charlie's statistics and threw out other statistics as an opposition, which I considered very good. It got people thinking. Charlie Kirk was wrong on some of his statistics. They combated those with facts. And that, I think, is the way in which political discourse and discourse in a civil society should go. And unfortunately, what we're seeing, though, with Charlie Kirk's assassination is that that's not the way a lot of people think. And there's been a media backlash, a social media backlash. People have been saying that Charlie Kirk deserved it. They've been celebrating his death, in part because of the hyperbolic language about what he represented as a person, forgetting that his whole reason for being there was to engage in debate with the other side, agree or disagree. It was all about civility. These people celebrated his death, and now that has started a backlash on the right, which I think is also hyperbolic. We're going to get into a little of this and talk about whether or not this backlash is appropriate, whether or not some of the things that Trump wants to do is constitutional, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We got a lot on our plate today. Hopefully we'll be able to get to all of it. We have some questions, though. We have some comments here that Persephone's sending me. Bullshit, he should have sent you an autographed copy. Oh, well, look at that. Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. Yes.
He should know that he's not home right now, and I have access to everything virtually he owns. So let's just put that out there.
My side. I'm going to agree with everything Subby says, unless it turns the other way. Greg Lewis.
Yeah, he's just making excuses because he hasn't read either of my books yet. So of course he's going to side with you.
But he's also a very generous friend of yours, so you can. He has that bank account that he's built up. Guilt has fueled altruism.
Not as big as yours.
This is Greg Lewis says guilt has fueled altruism for centuries. It gets better mileage than most ICEs today, international combustion engines. Okay, yes, that's true as well. It's certainly the source of our failing welfare state and our involvement in many international wars. Kate says the opposition insists he was inciting violence, but he really wasn't. He debated his views, which he allowed to do. He did not rally people to commit horrific acts. I'm not familiar with any time that he has done that, Michael. I don't know if you are. To me, he was doing what every person. Okay. Go ahead.
All right. I want in. So first of all, I don't know enough about him to know that his motivation is or was what everybody's claiming. I'm skeptical. Given when I say skeptical, I'm saying that based on what I have seen, these were not good faith debates. I don't know. Now there's just I'm seeing clips. I'm not watching his whole show. I don't know everything about him. So I don't know. Well, when somebody challenges him on the murder of George Floyd, and I want to get into this a little bit, he repeats the right-wing propaganda that George Floyd died of an overdose and that Derek Chauvin was just following protocol and he's therefore innocent. To me, when you're repeating that to a college kid on the fly, that's not a good faith debate. Right.
How so? This is he's giving his perspective. The college kid's giving his perspective.
Because here's why.
What else can he add to that?
Well, hold on. This is why. First of all, there's enough information out there to know that that's right-wing propaganda. That's the first thing. It's not even hard to find that you're just when you make a statement. Let's just take this one. And I really want to kind of dive into this. When you say, he died of an overdose. There was enough fentanyl in his system to kill him. If you are not smart enough to understand that you cannot judge what level of fentanyl would kill an individual human being based on statistical averages, you ought not be talking about it, because anybody that's ever studied drug abuse, drug addiction knows there's tolerance. My father used to shoot 30 bags of heroin in one shot. If your average person came out and just did 2, it would probably kill him. So if they went and they tested my father's body and they say, this is how much heroin was in his system, all these people could be saying, it's enough to kill him. That's what he died from. Wouldn't be the case. Jim Valiant says, good faith or bad, it's still words. I agree 100%, Jim. That's not what we're talking about. I'm only going, I want to look into this narrative that all he wanted to do was have good faith debates and celebrate free speech.
I don't know that the argument is fully, all he wanted to do is have good faith debate.
That's what I've heard. I'm saying that's what I've heard.
Do was confront the opposition and give both sides an air, give both sides a chance to respond to each other. Because from his point of view, it's when people start talking that violence happens. Now, in my view, whether or not the debate was in good faith, whether or not he was simply repeating a right-wing talking point, is almost irrelevant to the fact that he is engaging with the other side in the act of communication, which in itself is a form of building a bridge.
There was no. I disagree with that, Mark. I disagree, and I have no. Listen, when I go debate people, I'm not trying to build a bridge either. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. You're trying to defeat the opponent most of the time.
That's true, but
okay. Now hold on, but I just want to say, look what Robert Naser said, because I think Robert's spot on. It's one thing for your average Joe to fall for false talking points. It's something else altogether for an intellectual working in the field of political discourse to do so. That's why I'm saying I'm not buying the good faith stuff. And now here's the problem. There's so many problems actually. So I have a friend. And the friend called me the other day. First, he was upset a week or so ago that his family is stopping talking to him for things that he's posting online. And he doesn't understand that what he's posting is incendiary. And it's also based on very little. I would be skeptical if this friend could identify the 3 branches of government. Okay. So it's not somebody that's full of knowledge, but he has no problem with all these opinions that he takes from right-wing talk shows like Charlie Kirk. Then he told me yesterday, he says, what did he say now? He said half the country's crazy, meaning his half, those on the right, are not. So now let's just, let me take this down from Robert. I really want to get into this George Floyd stuff.
I did want to address what Robert says, but I'll wait till you're finished.
Okay. Well, you can address it. Go ahead, because there's so much. What's the word? And this is something that neither side has a monopoly on, is hypocrisy.
Okay. Although I agree with Robert that when an intellectual does something like that, it's certainly a different animal. But I don't consider Charlie Kirk an intellectual. I consider him a pundit. I consider him an advocate for a particular side. Now, what he was doing when he was going into these universities was going into quote unquote enemy territory, where one side, just as biased as Charlie Kirk is with his side, has been the dominant narrative in the social sciences and in the liberal arts curriculum for decades. And going in there, even if he's spreading MAGA right-wing talking points, still he's challenging these people's premises, who have a responsibility, I think, to counter his talking points with facts, as I have seen done. When Charlie Kirk said 13% of the population is black, 50% of the prison population is black. How do you explain that? I watched an African American pick those statistics apart and say, this is not true. In fact, it's 30.
Did you see it in real time?
I did not see it in real time.
You saw the same video I saw. You saw a guy produce a video with Charlie Kirk saying that, and the guy fact checked him. That wasn't in person. But Mark, my challenge to you,
it wasn't in challenge, but it inspired that kind of dialogue, which is important. Now, I never knew that Charlie Kirk was out for a good faith argument, a good faith debate. I thought what he was doing was opening a conduit of communication between opposing sides, which up to this point have been violently opposed to each other. They've stopped talking. They've stopped seeing the other side as human beings, and they've started in this dehumanizing process to become violent with one another. And if his intention was to stop that violence by opening up a conduit of communication, even if he's wrong, even if he's just doing right-wing talking points, it's still a step in the right direction, in my view. And I don't consider him intellectual. So,
but that's not what you started with, Mark. You said his goal was to promote free speech and to build bridges. What I'm saying is I have a hard time believing that.
I'm saying that by other words. I'm not
yeah.
using those
okay. And I'm saying I don't believe and Jim is saying things that nobody's claiming. So I don't understand why Jim is saying this. He said he doesn't much care how incendiary his words were. I'm not saying his words were incendiary. We're talking specifically about what his mission was. And I don't believe his mission was to promote free speech. And I don't believe it was to build bridges. And I don't believe he much cared about freedom. This is a guy who said, and look, I'm not trying to bash him. And of course he didn't deserve to die. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm not even saying he's wrong to go in and challenge kids. What I'm challenging is this narrative that's being put out there. This is a guy who said that people crossing the border should be shot with rubber bullets. And if that doesn't work, they should be gassed. Okay. He's somebody that said he unequivocally supports the war on drugs. And he's somebody who said that whoever attacked Nancy Pelosi's husband, some patriotic American should go and bail that person out. Right. And on top of that, the lies and propaganda about George Floyd. All I'm saying is that is not somebody who's out there trying to promote rational discourse. It's not somebody who's out there fighting for freedom. That's my only point.
Look, to me, that's why the guy is considered a pundit to me. He'll say controversial things for whatever reason. I've never heard those particular comments. I'm sure you've researched it and found those comments. I don't think that those particular comments necessarily frame the entirety of his message, which seems to have been one of faith and certainly of fidelity to the MAGA movement. And so some of that rhetoric certainly supports the MAGA movement, which is, of course, anti-immigration and, of course, biased against all leftists. And if he contributed to the violent discourse and the hyperbole about what happened to Pelosi, that's pretty crazy. That certainly is part of the problem. But I think his presence at these venues was an attempt at opening doors of communication. Whether he did that well or not, whether he fell back on propaganda or not, is something separate and certainly something important to deal with. But I think that discourse needs to happen between the two sides. They need to start understanding that civilization is preserved by elevating reason, which means persuading one another of your point of view, and not demonizing each other. So saying those controversial things aside, which are despicable, I have to say, if that's what he said, he also tried to humanize both sides, including mostly his side, to get people to see that maybe he's not quite, or the right in general isn't quite as awful as they think. Both sides want policy that forces people. Indeed, of course,
yes,
James Zeldin is right again.
No, of course he's right. But the problem is that, and we should criticize both sides. And that is my entire point. And as Race Jacobson points out, there's a whitewashing right now of who he was, and it's coming from the right. And there's a smearing coming from the left. And I agree. Our focus should be on truth. And just as I find it absolutely disgusting that you have people out there that are celebrating this guy getting killed for speech, because ultimately that's what he was doing, talking, whether I agree with it or not. I think these people out there are reprehensible that are celebrating his death. If you can't dismantle what he's saying, if you can't expose that he's wrong, that's your problem, right? That doesn't mean somebody deserves death. And it's certainly, if you're concerned that he's convincing people, well, then if people are that malleable or that subject to disinformation, then woe to the human species, right?
Look,
Woe to the human species.
what I like about, I, like you, have only seen snippets of what he's done. I've never really been that interested in Charlie Kirk because I disagree with 99.9% of what he says. But he does challenge he did challenge the narrative of what these college students were learning. He challenged their historical narrative, their colonialist, imperialist narrative, which I think deserved to be challenged. Whether he did that in good faith or not, whether he threw things into the mix that weren't factual, well, to me, it's up to the students to know their subject and to be able to respond accordingly. It's about defeating him in the field of ideas, not silencing the messenger. Ian Gilmore says, Kirk backed the pardon of J6 rioters. I know that's unfortunate. He backed the election fraud claims, also unfortunate, but typical for somebody who's in the Trump camp, and helped bus people to J6, also unfortunate. He was a bad guy. But shooting him was wrong and should be condemned. Yes. Would you go as far as to say he's a bad guy?
I don't know him. I don't know. So here's the thing, and
because he did those things. Would you call him a bad guy?
I think that some of those things are bad. I don't know his character because
Seth Rogen, for example, started a movement to bail out all the Antifa rioters.
Right, and that's why I'm saying I'm not going to sit here and say this was a bad guy. I don't know him. I didn't know. I don't know how he related to his wife, to his children, to his friends. I don't know. What I do know is that there's
wife. According to his wife, he was amazing, but of course,
she was his wife, right? So right now, Mark, there's simultaneous things happening with the tribalism in this country. There's the right, and by right, I hate even using the term right. There's Charlie Kirk supporters who are painting him as if he was a saint, including things like showing him in Jesus's arms, all types of memes of that nature. And then there's people trying to make him as if he's the devil himself. It seems to me that neither of these are accurate, and we should call out both for being wrong if our commitment is to truth. My friend is crying about this, saying this is such a good guy. And I'm like, what do you mean? You don't even know him. You know a personality that you see on a screen. You don't know this guy. I can't say he's a bad guy because I don't know him either. And that's kind of like my point. Now we have this situation, and the polarization drives me crazy when people see things just from a lens of their perspective, and everything from that perspective is automatically right and everything from the other is automatically wrong. Now, we previously heard about cancel culture and how horrible it was for people to be canceled for their ideas or for their speech. Personally, I don't have a big problem with firing people for the things that they say, ostracizing people from polite society if they're saying horrible things. That's up to individuals to, the choices that they want to make. I can either listen to it, not listen to it, whatever. If I'm an employer, I should be able to fire or hire people based on whatever I want. So that cancel culture, I always thought was really overblown. It's not something that I'm primarily concerned with, but there were a lot of people
I want to deal with that before you just remind me that I have to deal with this.
Okay, I will. Let me just say, I'm not saying that we should develop a culture where everybody that says something that we don't like gets canceled. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people that say things that are, incendiary and generally not good things to say. So now some of the same people who were out there railing against cancel culture are getting the people who are celebrating online or saying negative things about Charlie Kirk. They've got lists to get them fired. They want their employers to look at this stuff. And their argument is, yes, but when you celebrate someone's death, that's different. But now you're moving the goalpost and you're changing the argument. You're not any longer arguing that cancellation is wrong when it comes to free speech. What you're saying is cancellation is okay based on the content, but then you have to argue. Now, look, there's plenty of people on the right. I see memes all the time online that say, oh, let's celebrate George Floyd 5 years clean today, based, or 3 years clean today, based on how long he's been dead. I've seen them defend Derek Chauvin, celebrate the January 6th people, celebrate and laugh and joke about Nancy Pelosi's husband, showed very little remorse for Melissa Hortman when she was murdered, right? But now,
I never even really saw anybody from the right talk about that.
No. And so my whole point here isn't that it's wrong for them to be doing this. It's just the utter hypocrisy that pours from both sides of the aisle. It's so gross that when my entire political life, I've heard people on the left refer to Republicans as Nazis, George Bush as Hitler, racists, and everything else, Joe Biden. Oh, they want to put y'all back in chains and all that stuff. But then Maxine Waters and get in their face, or whichever one said that. But then they get all offended and appalled when Donald Trump talks that way. But the flip side is also the case. Donald Trump talks that way and then gets upset when the people on the other side talk that way. It's utterly ridiculous and hypocritical.
So first of all, I have to say Persephone has reminded me that about our disclaimer. Yes, we are not, this show is not affiliated with the American Capitalist Party's perspective or policies, which you can find on americancapitalistparty.org. We just got so passionately involved, I forgot to say that disclaimer. We are giving our own opinions right now, not necessarily the position of the American Capitalist Party. But you can go to that website to find out what our positions are. So, Michael, Race Jacobson says something that I wanted to touch on with respect to cancel culture. I think that
and I agree with this, by the way. I agree with Race's statement.
Okay, good. I'm glad you do. I think that cancel culture on both left and right devolves into witch hunts of normal people, even Walmart employees, coercion by harassment. Now, I agree with this, Michael, not as an abstraction, but as someone who has experienced it. It's one thing to ostracize somebody for what they've said, right? For something terrible that they have said. It's another thing to twist something that someone has said into a false narrative and then create a viral false narrative that then jeopardizes that person's livelihood. I'll give you a perfect example. I was a supporter of Black Lives Matter early in around 2013 when they were showing videos that appeared to show policemen murdering unarmed black men. And I would post these videos rather liberally because it was so horrifying to me. Then Ferguson happened. And what happened in Ferguson was Michael Brown was shot by a police officer. And the narrative that Black Lives Matter perpetuated was that he at first put his hands up and said, "Don't shoot," and the police officer murdered him in cold blood.
It never happened.
This was forensically proven wrong. Another thing that was forensically proven was that Michael Brown had just come from a strong arm robbery where there's video footage of this guy who they painted as a kid, but he was something like 6'5" and 240 pounds. He was a massive guy beating the shit out of a shop owner to take something from the shop. And what was forensically proven in the trial was that Mr. Brown had actually gone for the police officer's firearm, and in going for the police officer's firearm, the police officer had to shoot and kill the kid. Still, the narrative was promoted that the hands up, don't shoot was the truth by Black Lives Matter, and still they promoted violence in Ferguson, which of course precipitated a riot. And all through 2020, Black Lives Matter could be seen as an element of chaos through the quote unquote summer of love, where Portland was taken over, where Seattle was taken over, where riots in Minneapolis devastated the entire community over the George Floyd death. Black Lives Matter then became, from Ferguson on, were on my shit list. And when I would say they were shysters, when I would say they're not really for Black lives, people accused me of being a racist, because at the time, if you didn't support Black Lives Matter, it was an indication that you were a racist. I posted an article by an objectivist psychologist who broke down Black Lives Matter and talked specifically about what they were, how pathological an organization
Not
were.
Michael Hurd. Please don't say Michael Hurd.
It was Hurd, but the article was
good. God.
You may not like him, but the article was good. People posted that article, which they never read, as evidence that I was a racist. Now, this became viral within the supernatural community, a certain aspect of the supernatural community that wants to look at me a certain way. None of them could point to a single racist thing I said. In fact, all of my posts are the exact opposite. They clearly, explicitly despise racism, as I do. I explicitly despise racism as the lowest form of collectivism. And yet that narrative got out there, and those people were attempting to cancel me for something I did not say, do not believe, and do not endorse. Although I do endorse the fact that Black Lives Matter is a fake organization, that these Marxist troublemakers are in fact in it for something other than the uplifting of the Black community. They're in it for something else. And it was proven when they absconded $90 million of money, bought mansions, and none of that money trickled down to the poor in the Black community. So clearly I was in the right, and yet cancel culture tried to get me.
See, that to me this is a problem with amorphous and ambiguous terms like cancel culture to begin with, because to me they're lying about you and misrepresenting you. They're not doing things because of what you actually said. Now, there's a couple of comments that I want to get to. So Scott Schiff says, and he cleared this up, he didn't mean objectivism. He says objectivists should have been stronger on cancel culture when it was happening from the left. Now people want one single standard more than justice per se. It's a kind of justice. To me, if you were silent about cancel culture when it was happening before, but now you're speaking up, that's hypocrisy. If you spoke up before on how much you hated cancel culture, meaning people getting canceled for their opinions and points of view, but now you're cheering people getting fired for what they're saying, it's hypocrisy. My own personal point of view aligns closer with what Robert says here. Robert says, like tolerance, and in fact intrinsically tied to it, the propriety of advocating boycotts depends on who, what is being boycotted, aka canceled, and why. I actually agree with that, and I do agree that celebrating somebody's death or somebody's horrific murder is objectively worse than a lot of things that people were canceled for in the past. My point is that but that is a different argument than that was made in the past. Before it was made based on free speech.
Well, I'm gonna have to part ways with you a little bit here, Michael, because look, I think cancel culture. I think like you do, that every individual has the right to associate with whom they choose. Yeah. And if somebody has views that are abhorrent to theirs, they have the right to not associate with them. They even have the right to say, look, this person believes this certain thing, and if you don't like that, maybe you shouldn't associate with them either. But look, I celebrate the deaths of people all the time. I celebrated the death of Nasrallah. I celebrate the death of Hamas murderers. I celebrated the death of Yahya Sinwar. I cheered, because to me, that's justice. That's justice.
Yeah, I explicitly said murder, Mark. Right. I'm talking about the unjustified murder of somebody.
Okay, so you said death. You said death.
I did, and then I said murder. Okay. Yeah, because that's what I'm talking about.
I'm okay with celebrating the deaths of certain people. The unfortunate thing is people aren't being able to make the distinctions between what really is objectively bad and what is nuanced and what is good. And so they're celebrating the people celebrating Charlie Kirk's death the way they are, the horrible way that they are celebrating the death of a straw man, Michael. They're celebrating a man they've made up in their head. They've created a narrative about, and there may be some evidence to push that narrative in the direction that gives them the sense that they're actually believing something true. And that's what I find to be horrific. You should celebrate the death of a person who is truly awful. But the incendiary language that everybody's using to describe the other side dehumanizes and makes the opposition awful, inherently so. And so that's, I think, in part a cause to this. Now, what's the solution? I don't know that there could be a legal solution to any of this. I don't know that there's anything the government can or should do about this.
Could you about
Certainly,
what? Which part? About
any
which
of
part?
this incendiary language, about the language that people use to describe others. Calling people call me a Nazi. It's an unbelievable accusation that they level against me.
Having the government step in. See,
But
there's so many
right, they
things
shouldn't. They
intertwined
can't.
here.
The government cannot step in, even as horrific and dishonest as those accusations are against me. The government has no place to move in and call that and call that a type of political speech that needs to be regulated. I'm sorry, no, it's words. It's words that some people may believe because they won't look any further than those words, or whatever complex reasons allow them to believe those fake words, but they're still words, and those words need to be combated with other words. They don't need to be combated by the government getting involved in stopping speech.
That is true. And when we're talking about, see, as ultimately people have the right to make their own decisions on whom to praise, whom to criticize. And it's each can judge the actions of everybody else and act accordingly. Because there's people that would argue with you, wrongly so, that the people you celebrated dying were not horrible people. But that's an argument that each individual has to make, justify, and order their lives and decisions around those types of decisions, all of them. So if, in my view, if somebody wants to say, look, these guys celebrated Charlie Kirk dying or getting murdered, and an employer says, well, I don't want to keep those people here, he can fire them. An employer might say, you know what, I agree with those sentiments. I'll get the guy in here. I'll hire him.
Absolutely.
And the same goes for all of this stuff. The only point I was trying to point out, Mark, is the utter hypocrisy of both sides, of the left now complaining about cancel culture and the right practicing it, when before it was flip-flop. Now, Scott Schiff says that Elon's been good on cancel culture. I think you ought to go to Twitter and see what he's been tweeting the last few days before we start praising Elon as the guru and king of free speech.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him that. That's for sure. And Mike, this happens every time one side loses the levers of power.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. He says no, Elon Journo. I thought he was talking about Elon Musk. Scott, I apologize.
Yeah, Elon Journo would be, I think, probably the appropriate source to go to for this kind of stuff if you want sane thinking on this matter. Well, this is going to occupy quite a bit of our time in different dimensions here. You sent me something from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire that I had to respond to. I actually, quote tweeted this and basically told them to fuck off.
Good for you.
Here's what the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire says. Now, folks, there's a new blood libel circulating around since Charlie Kirk's death. It's all the anti-Semites have again come out of the woodwork and have blamed Charlie Kirk's death on the Jews. Now it's even going further than Charlie Kirk. See, apparently Charlie Kirk has run afoul of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis, and in the last few days or weeks of his life, actually feared the Israelis. He feared that they were going to come after him because he was starting to turn somehow on the Gaza war. Now, I'm not privy enough to Charlie Kirk's conversations on campuses or to his podcasts, or even to his radio show. He was on a syndicated talk radio show, to know that he was changing his mind with respect to Israel. But according to these people who are passing on this new blood libel, he was. And worse, and even more interesting, is the fact that President Trump fears for his life now because the Mossad, the king of assassins, and we've seen how truly interesting and creative the Mossad can be when they are attacking foes. And so this, of course, lends credence in the minds of conspiracy theorists to every conspiracy they can hatch about the all-powerful Jews controlling everything. Well, Trump is apparently on the hit list as well because his mind is turning away from the Israelis and the Gaza war, and the Jews will not let that happen. So, folks, I'm going to say outright as my position here, and I guarantee it will not be proven wrong. The Jews have nothing to do with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. It was a single person, disgruntled, as they say, radicalized by the internet, or at least whatever psychopathy he happens to suffer from. It promoted that psychopathy and incentivized him to do what he did. It had nothing to do with the Jews. And I doubt very highly that Trump is afraid of the Mossad. And so try not to let any of these blood libeling conspiracy theorists out there who are just anti-Israel try to morph this conversation into something it isn't. It's really a conversation about political rivalries and tribalism and intolerance within the political rivalry tribes, and their inability to actually communicate with one another and try to persuade each other, and their demonization of each other, and their hypocrisy, their massive hypocrisy, all of which Michael and I are in agreement with. And there is one party out there, folks, that does not engage in hypocrisy, that has a foundation of solid principles that it would never ever compromise under any circumstances, and that's the American Capitalist Party. So go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org and donate to the site. Please read the policies. I think you'll find them a refreshing change from the tribalistic nonsense you're seeing today and all the violence that it's fomenting. Ours is a peaceful movement that puts reason ahead of violence. And you can also like and subscribe to this station, please, and share it from YouTube, which I am still yet to do. But please share it from YouTube to other platforms. The algorithm likes that. The message of liberty, the message of reason, rational self-interest, and individual rights needs to be predominant out there. It needs to take over from the altruist ethics. And Michael, I don't know if you knew this fact. I just discovered it when you sent me this post from X. But 300 million Americans died last year from drug overdoses.
They did, yes.
So I know that the environmentalists out there are hoping for a mass die-off of human beings, because that would, of course, lower our carbon footprint and reduce the possibility of the oceans rising and the world coming to an end. And so I'm sure, I guess that would be what, 96% of American population dying last year, leaving a 4% population left over. Well, that would be a boom for the environmentalist movement. And we're a pastoral society. We're no longer industrial, with only 48 or 50 million people left in America. I didn't know this. But
I didn't even know there were that many drug addicts. I mean, because not every drug addict dies, right, from an overdose. So if there is, 300 million died, most of us remaining must be addicts, right? Must be fentanyl addicts, I guess.
It came from Fox News. And Michael, what I found interesting was the reporter didn't correct it.
No. Why wouldn't you say, hey, wait a second, what are you talking about?
300 million. Wait, I thought, how many people are there in America? You could ask Grok really quickly. Is it 378 million people in America? Is it or 400 million now? Are we up to 400?
I think it's 358, but I'll check.
Yeah, so just in case, folks, you were wondering where your baker went, where the grocer went, where all those people were, you went outside and it was like 28 days later. Like poor Cillian Murphy went outside and nobody was there. Well, now you know why. They all died of fentanyl poisoning. And of course, this is going to spur Trump to increase his military vigilance over these Venezuelan thugs that are bringing drugs into our country, and he'll continue to use the Coast Guard and the Navy to blast these drug cartel boats into oblivion and kill as many people as possible, rather than legalize the drugs and take the power, the economic power, away from the cartels, which enables them to take over governments and enables them to terrorize states the way they do. God forbid, or I should say, Dad forbid, that the conservatives actually turn away from the drug wars and actually mitigate the violence by legalizing the drugs. Anyway, did you find out how many people there are exactly in the United States of America?
Yeah, it's 347,500,000 and some change.
Okay, so 47 million and some change are left, and somehow we escaped it, Michael. It's like, thank God I don't do drugs or alcohol, so we escaped it. But that's, if you go outside, you notice not many people are there. Maybe Subby's not here, so maybe he was one of them. I hope not. Oh,
no. Subby, please check in on the chat. Let us know if the fentanyl boogeyman has gotten you while you're out mowing lawns.
So the Epoch Times also talked about something that you talked about earlier. Employees are fired or suspending for celebrating Charlie Kirk's death. Now, My position is very similar to yours as a private citizen. You have every right to associate with whom you want to associate. And if you think, as horrible as this sounds, folks, if you think Charlie Kirk's death was a boon to humanity and you don't want to fire that employee, well, you shouldn't have to, and the government shouldn't order you to. And if you think that it was a terrible tragedy, and somebody who thinks it wasn't should be fired from your employ, well, you have a right to do that as well, because nobody has a right to a job. But Michael, what do you think about the federal government going after people in federal positions like the military or teachers who are employed by the state for their celebration of Charlie Kirk's death? Do you think there's any legitimacy to that? Because surely that
problem here, like, okay, this is why this stuff gets bad, and it's difficult, right? What constitutes someone celebrating? Suppose somebody says, look, I don't wish the guy bad, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. Is that guy celebrating? Do his comments cross the line? There could be some difficulties, but in general, I would say that if somebody is representing the government of the United States, then yes, I think this stuff, if you're celebrating, cheering, then yeah, I'd say that it should be a fireable offense. But I just want to share something. I posted this to X and to Facebook. Matt Walsh, I think he's from the, is he from the Daily Wire? Matt Walsh?
He's the guy who did the documentary on What Is a Man? Is that the guy?
Yes. Yeah. So he says, put me on the defending Derek Chauvin list. He followed standard police protocols and detained a violent junkie who died of an overdose in the process. Charlie Kirk contributed more to society in a single day than George Floyd did in his entire life. So I put the question on both Facebook and X. Is this just as bad as people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder? This guy's defending somebody convicted of murder, a cop who clearly didn't do what he was supposed to do. He's smearing the victim, right? My answers on Facebook, no, certainly is. And then this is my favorite. No, Matt Walsh is just stating an objective fact. No, he's not. But here's the good part. Now the leftist jumps in, right? The leftist jumps in, doesn't disagree with him politely. No, this guy says, no, dickhead. He was lying, you asswipe. So that is the nature of the discourse.
Yeah, it's ugly, man. And look, part of Matt Walsh's part of Matt Walsh's statement is true. Charlie Kirk brought more value to the world than George Floyd certainly did. George Floyd brought value to the world after his death because I was one of the people who donated part of that $23 or $24 million that went to his GoFundMe that made his family rich after his death. He of course was not a decent human being. But for anybody who knows anything about submission and control of another human being, as anybody who does jiu-jitsu knows, when you have your shin across the back of somebody's neck, you're in complete control of them. And when they're saying they can't breathe, you really shouldn't just sit there for 10 minutes while the person's saying that in that position. You can shift your position and still control the person. Now, and still control the person adequately without your leg and the entire weight of your body on their neck. So clearly he was not sensitive to the moment, and not sensitive to the person he was arresting, and part of his responsibility as a police officer, yes, he has to subdue people who are bad. Sometimes will lie about what state they're in order, to get the upper hand on you. But he also has to protect and serve and protect the rights of the individual whom he is arresting. And that in part means subduing them in such a way that as to cause as little physical harm as possible. And he showed a true lack of concern for the physical harm of the other person. That's demonstrable to me.
I would highly recommend anybody interested in really figuring this out to read Radley Balco's series on the issue. He responded to the movie. I think that the documentary was called Minnesota Falling. And Radley Balco just absolutely picked it apart. I'd highly recommend it. But I do want to address something. So we have B. Moni Das has returned. B. Moni Das, the person which I gave an opportunity to come on my show and express her opinions. B. Moni Das, the person who I engaged in DMs in a very polite manner, who nonetheless felt the need to come into my DMs, attack me and my friend, and then block me. So without further ado, I'm going to return the favor. Please stop stalking us. Goodbye.
Yes, B. Moni is obsessed. Now she's partly obsessed, Michael, because I refused to accept her apology. I want to say why. Look, normally, folks, I just want to say this. If you're sorry for what you've done, I'm a huge believer in forgiving you. If you're truly sorry for what you've done, I forgive you. I've had many spats with people who realize that, they fucked up, and oftentimes I'm part of the fuck up too, and I admit it myself. And in which case we reconcile. In the case of B. Moni, she said many, many, many terrible and false things about me online to lots of people, and then claimed to make up for it and say she was sorry. And she wanted me to accept her apology, which I did not. And I wasn't wrong, because then she went out and started doing the same thing, and under sock accounts and worse. Now, there's a line in a great play called Doubt by John Patrick Shanley, where a priest is being accused of molesting somebody. And so he gives a sermon about gossip. And he describes gossip in a certain way, Michael. He describes gossip as opening up a feather pillow and throwing all of the feathers out, and so the feathers just go on the wind everywhere. And when somebody apologizes for that gossip, he says in response, and this is a terrible paraphrasing of a very poetic sermon, go out and pick up all the feathers, and when you've picked up all the feathers and brought them back, I will forgive you. What B. Moni Das essentially did was spread things around the fandom, especially on purpose, with the intent of hurting me, that she can't take back now. There's no way she can take them back. She can't take all those feathers back and put them in the case where they belong. And so she doesn't get my forgiveness. Folks, we encourage you as rational egoists ourselves to behave as rationally as possible and to not spread lies about people. Not only does it hurt the other person's reputation, but to be honest with you, it's terribly damaging to your own psychology, because on some level, you're lying. You're acting on revenge, and that, you're not in sync with the facts and reality. And Michael, I think that does terrible things to your self-esteem, to be honest with you. It's a downward spiral of lies upon lies upon lies upon lies, because reality is hunting you down, and eventually reality is going to win. Anyway, I'm glad you kicked her off. No better place for her than to be off instead of stalking us with her sock accounts. Should we talk about what's that?
She's a psycho. She's a psycho.
She's literally unhinged and needs help. Behind the curtain, 4 ominous trends. This is an article you sent me from Axios. And it begins with 4 concurrent trends suggest America's volatile politics, culture, and security could worsen in the months ahead. Now, we'll get into the trends if we have time. We only have about 6 minutes left. But what did you think of it? Do you think that the political atmosphere now, Michael, since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, is going to descend into a kind of chaos and civil war? I know the American Communist Party is hoping.
No, I don't.
I don't either. But tell me your
reasons.
Tell me your reasons.
I think that by and large, the type of person who is on X, posting behind a pseudonym, calling for a civil war, are not the types that are actually going to engage in it. I think that it's very easy when you're talking about an ambiguous they than when you're actually looking at your neighbors, friends, and family. So I think that they're, I think there's a lot of hostility, and it could get bad. Bad when one person gets shot like that, it's bad. But do I think that we're going to devolve into what some of these people are saying? No, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget, folks, we've been in these situations before. I feel like 2025 and the new millennia has sort of reminded me of 1968, Michael, which America witnessed a series of horrible domestic cases of domestic violence, of riots, of assassinations of very prominent people, political aspirants like Robert Kennedy, peace advocates like Martin Luther King Jr. All of these people were assassinated, and it felt like end times in 1968. The Tet Offensive had happened right when America thought it was defeating the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese came back with the Tet Offensive, which demoralized the entire country. There were protests all across and riots all across the country. This is not new news, folks. And though I feel like the partisan divide is more intense than ever and more irrational than ever, it's also causing an undercurrent of a need, for Michael, for rational discourse. People are hungry for rational discourse, and I think that's what makes shows like this a show that will eventually fill that need. Which is why you need to like and subscribe to the station and share it as liberally as possible, because here we talk reason, and we want to make reason great again. Okay, so. Yeah, so this article posits Charlie Kirk's slaying and more high-profile assassination attempts, even against President Trump, as and the attempted arson against Governor Josh Shapiro, which we forgot. I mean, I completely forgot about that somebody tried to burn down this man's house while he and his family were in it, for crying out loud. That it's indicative of what happened in the late 1960s, and the school shootings in Denver at the same time. I guess some crazed little neo-Nazi attempted to take out some kids at a school and then took his own life in Denver. These are happening with increasing frequency. Folks, I have to tell you, this is not the point of view of the American Capitalist Party, but I think on a personal level that there are no gun laws that can prevent this kind of thing. I am for arming teachers, letting them carry CCW so that you don't know which of the faculty are armed, and having them trained to protect their children, since the children are their wards at the time that they have them. Their responsibility is to protect them. I've discovered, at least through John Lott, who knows these statistics, that there are 19 districts in the state of Texas where they allow the teachers to be armed, to carry concealed weapons, and none of those districts has ever experienced a school shooting, and they never will. And we do know from surviving school shooters, mass shooters, that they do intentionally choose these places to build up casualty counts and to avoid getting shot themselves. There are calls for violence and civil war are spreading across social media, of course, but you and I think, Michael, social media isn't really an accurate barometer of what's going on in America. It's just lots of voices and lots of bots and lots of politicized bots ginning up their bases and I guess acceding to the algorithm, because that's what sells. This kind of negativity sells, and so it seems to be highly promoted on social media, but doesn't necessarily reflect the psyche of Americans in general, or the disposition of Americans in general. Would you agree with that?
I have no idea, because I was busy reading the comments.
Thank you. Once again, what I have to say, I could see when you have the faraway look in your eyes or somewhere else that you're not listening to what I have to say. I'm not going to.
They were talking about our merch. They were talking about buying merch.
Yes, folks, the merch is up. I want you to know, everybody, merch for Capitalist Corner is
up.
Up.
Persephone's saying it's not up.
What?
Persephone is yelling it's not up.
Persephone and I had a whole meeting yesterday and put this stuff
in. A whole meeting?
A whole meeting, yes.
Not a half meeting?
Not a half meeting. It was a whole meeting.
At any rate, there's a big argument.
I think she's right. She did tell me in the end something went amiss, but go ahead.
She says, and I told you I needed one more thing. Okay. No,
That's
there's
right.
just a debate over whose merch they're going to buy. Are they going to buy mine, yours, that
Don't
sort
start
of
a
thing?
competition between me and Michael. Don't start a competition between.
No,
Yeah,
yes. Let's see who wins it. Let's see who can sell more merch. If you buy from your favorites. But somebody in the chat said I look like a bean, which I thought was a little strange, but
you look
whatever. I mean, we can
like
go
a bean.
a bean. Yeah.
Oh, I see that.
What? All right. Can you give the capitalist thought of the day? It's you.
Are we
You
there?
owe like 6.
I don't know 6 capitalist thoughts for the day. All right, so we didn't get to everything today, folks, because it's been a very heavy news day, and we only have an hour with you. But look, I mean, with the political discourse the way it is today, being really no discourse, it's really one side pointing the finger at the other, and conveniently, literally, conveniently betraying their own principles when they're out of the levers of power, or in the levers of power. Folks, political discourse requires debate. It requires contentious debate, not violence, but debate, because the idea is to persuade the other side that your side is right. And that's the kind of society that the capitalist society creates, one in which persuasion and free exchange are the ideals. We live by the trader principle. We live by the win-win principle of exchanging to mutual benefit. And that includes ideas, folks. The current society, the statist society, the altruist society, the sacrificial society, thrives on violence and contention. They thrive on dividing people in such a way as to make them feel like they have conflicting wants and rights, and that they have entitlements to things that they do not. No such division exists in an individualistic society where the smallest minority in the world is protected by the government, and that's the sole purpose of the government, and where your recourse in the political realm is not to violence to persuade, but to discussion, to talk, to reason. Our society promotes reason over violence, and that is the ideal society. It won't produce the utopia that the communists want, where everybody seems to be in, kumbaya state of equality, but it will produce a peaceful society where everyone's potential has the possibility to be actualized. That's the kind of world I want to see. So, folks, you have 23 hours to check your premises. If you're thinking statist thoughts at all, check those premises as quickly as possible, and come back tomorrow renewed, revived, and individualistic. All right? Until that time, peace.